your real estate journey.
So I got licensed, and real estate was always a passion for me because 49 years old, I found myself laying in a hospital bed facing a quadruple bypass.
Go ahead and just get started by kind of sharing your real estate journey and your story.
Okay. Well, it started back right after 9/11. I had an IT company that I lost, and real estate was kind of a second career for me. So I got licensed, and real estate was always a passion for me because my dad was an architect, and I kind of grew up on job sites. So I loved the creative process of home building and commercial office building and all that. So I always had a passion for it. But so I got licensed around 2002. So I've been in the business 21 years, cut my teeth at an ERA franchise. And a friend said, hey, come over here and work with me. It's a great company. I said, okay. I didn't check anybody else, didn't know any better at the time, and ended up being there about 7 years. And, I looked in the rearview mirror one day and said, holy cow, my broker's getting like $70,000, $80,000 a year off of me. That's probably way too much based on some other things I'm seeing. So I sought out, actually got recruited by a RE/MAX broker. So I went to RE/MAX from there, spent a year there. We had some philosophical differences. So I only stayed there a year, and I liked the RE/MAX model. So I bought my own franchise and ultimately grew it to the third largest RE/MAX in the Louisville, Kentucky market. And there were 13 RE/MAX offices in Louisville at the time. So I was proud of that. And, what was really never leaving, I thought they had the best model. And, as many people do, I was loyal to myself. I was the broker owner, and I didn't do a ton of recruiting, but still grew a nice brokerage just because of the reputation that we made for ourselves in the market. So,
right.
And then life happened, and if there's anything I get across today, I want our viewers to understand that, stop saying that'll never happen to me. And I think all of us are guilty of that. I certainly felt that way. I know you and I share a Christian belief, and I felt I was right with my maker, and I knew where I was going to end up. But at 49 years old, I found myself laying in a hospital bed facing a quadruple bypass heart surgery 2 days later because they wouldn't let me leave for 2 days. So I spent the next day getting my house in order because I thought I was going to die. And a lot of people are probably saying, well, heart surgery, that's no big deal. They do thousands of those a year right now. But my situation is I had no heart disease in my family. I had no high cholesterol. I had no high blood pressure. I never was a smoker. I worked out 5 days a week at the YMCA. I was the epitome of health and fitness, and there was no reason I should have been in that situation. So I thought the good Lord was calling me home and had another plan for me. And, thankfully, I made it through that, obviously, but I can remember thinking I haven't accomplished what I had set out to accomplish in this world. And I knew I couldn't even identify what that was at that time. I just knew there was something missing, something more I wanted to do. I knew it had something to do with giving back. I had no idea how I was going to do that. But that obviously was a life-changing moment. I was in the middle of owning my RE/MAX franchise. Thank God I had a team, because that passive income or that residual income off of the team kept me financially afloat, because most agents, if they left the business for 7 weeks, which is how long I was out of it for my recovery, they're out of business in
Right.
7 weeks. I handed my cell phone to my wife. I said, don't call me unless somebody's dying or bleeding. And she never called. So she kind of ran the office, and I stayed at home and recovered for 3 weeks. And then I went to the beach for 3 weeks and recovered in the sunshine, and just kind of got myself back together, and came back to work in week 8, and, was right back in the saddle again. So, and I say that because, bad things happen to good people, and, it might be health. of yourself. It might be health of a loved one. It might be, you know, a spouse, a child. You just never know. It might be a parent that you all of a sudden have to take care of. I've got a good friend that has that situation, and she's having to move from Alabama to Georgia to take care of her mother. Right. She might even be watching right now. But, you know, things happen. So when I found eXp, that was one of my curiosities. But before we go there, I'll finish the story. My cardiologist said, Tim, you were 80% blocked in all 4 arteries. And there's no physical reason why. You must just be too freaking stressed. You literally would have died in your recliner had you not have noticed the tightness in your chest.
Wow.
And I figured that out in the gym. You know, I never had a heart attack, thankfully, so I had no heart damage, but I was tight up high between my shoulders. I'm on the elliptical, and I thought I was stretching through it because 5 minutes in, it would start. I'm like, gosh, that's a little tight feeling. And then 5 minutes later, it would be gone. I'm like, okay, well, I stretched out, you know, those shoulder muscles, chest muscles, everything ties together. And I didn't think anything of it. But, you know, so that went on. And that's what told me, hey, you better mention this to your doctor at your annual physical this year. So picking back up, you know, I'm glad, obviously, I figured that out because I wouldn't be here today to tell about it. But so when she said, you must just be too stressed, I said, well, gosh, you know, I love my job. I love what I do. I love mentoring agents and pouring into them and teaching them. You know, my knowledge at the time was, you know, 10, 15 years. And so I said, well, there must be a lot of stress I'm not aware of. So make a very long story short, the following January, this happened on September 11th, actually, I share that with, you know, the 9/11 anniversary. That was the day of my heart surgery. Well, the following January, we were in church and the sermon series was entitled Simplify. And I'm like, okay, God spoke to me once back in September. He's telling me again, simplify your life, Tim. And very long story short, decided almost that day to sell the brokerage. Not because it was stressful, but figured, you know, if I can sell it and get debt free as a result, that'll simplify life a lot, having not any, you know, permanent long-term obligations. And so that's what I did. I went to a Remax broker in town, in my town in Louisville, that I thought needed my agent count and the volume of sales they were doing, and cut a deal with them. Signed a 3-year contract not to compete. And they asked me to stay on and run the company for them. I said, okay. Because obviously they knew my relationship was with the agents that I had. And, you know, if they'd have stepped in and became the broker, then they may have had some retention issues and so forth. So I said, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I wasn't stressed about that. I love that part of my job, like I said. So I stayed for 3 years. And at about month 34 of the 36 years, the purchaser of my company and myself and a couple of the leaders on the management team were evaluating, what do we do? Because their franchise agreement was coming up. The one they bought from me was coming up. So we were looking at every model out there. And in so doing, actually, we didn't even look at eXp specifically that way, but somebody called me that used to be an agent of mine and said, Tim, I want you to look at eXp Realty. I'm thinking of moving my license there, and I want to make sure I'm not making a huge mistake. Would you mind evaluating the model for me? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. I said, if you're really trying to recruit me, though, I'm not coming. I'm happy where I am. I love what I do. And I won't go into that story right now. But anyway, I looked at the model and was like, holy crap. And I'm a very detail-oriented person. So I studied the model inside out and backwards for about 60 days. And at the end of my 3-year no-compete, I took my sales team, the Hollinden team in Louisville, Kentucky, and we all moved to eXp. And they're with me to this day. And, you know, we generate 160 to 180 transactions a year on a good year. It's not been quite that the last couple because of inventory problems. And certainly now we have an interest rate problem, among other things. But, you know, life has been forever changed. I'll stop there and see if you have any questions, because I could just go for however long you plan on me being here.
Well, that's great. I really appreciate the backstory. I think there's probably a lot of, you know, independent broker owners or team leaders that really can kind of connect with you. That's interesting how you didn't feel stressed, but there was still a lot of stress in your body to create that, right? And I think a lot of us probably are in that, you know, same boat.